That's how, that's how, that's how that goes. Oh, let's get into it. Recording in progress because the host of Public Access America is here. The great, the fabulous, the amazing Jeffrey. What's up?
Yo.
Welcome to Public Access America. My name is Jeffrey. His name is Jason. Wait, my name is Jason. Your name is Jeffrey.
Wait, hold on. I've become someone else.
It has been a long week, Jeffrey, but we've had some amazing stuff going on at Public Access America. But I've talked to a lot of people, and I realized in the pre recording, I am really tired of my voice. we had a we had a great episode with Autonomous Angel from Twitter, Luna, and I asked Adam to sit in, and it was just about homelessness, domestic violence, isolation, and relationships, and the pandemic, and what to do and what not to do in an argument. And Luna ended up going to jail over the whole situation, and that's the episode right now on Public Access America. But it had a real effect on Adam, and so that, and then Inspirations Beyond Disabilities, we had a UK thing across the pond. We had Claire on to talk about body image and stuff, and then
Nice.
we live streamed with um, little Kevin and Mano from Hawaii, and they're two blind musicians, and it's just been like this whirlwind of just awesome content and conversations going on, and I am so happy because I'm done after you. But there's a lot of people that are listening, and they're like, what's going on with Jeffrey? Tell us more about Jeffrey.
Well, I mean, like, we've covered a lot in all of our episodes of Public Access America, things that I do, things are where I've been, what I've done.
Yeah.
You know, there's definitely been a lot to cover, so
Right.
I don't know, like in terms of current, in terms of ever, I mean,
Well, I think the thing is, and don't get upset about this, because this is what I cherish about this. I get you once a week, and it's cool, but I'm all over the place all week. You know what I mean?
mhm.
And I think there's some podcasters like, when can we have Jeffrey on? And I protect your privacy and my time with you, because I know if everybody gets you, then suddenly I don't get you as often. So I'm kind of being selfish. But there's other podcasts that are like, can we get Jeffrey on? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'll ask him. So you're loved around the world, you know what I mean? And that's
Well,
what's
it's
so cool.
well, that's fantastic. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's it's one of those things where, I haven't exactly made it my life's goal to strive to be loved, but
right.
I do things from a position of love, and whether or not you love me, it's on you.
Well,
I
I
mean,
love you.
I've personally been most people have seen me as a very polar person. They either love me or they hate me, and that's just the way it has been. And
Mm,
it is what it is. I can't necessarily help a person's perception of me. I just am who I am, and I try to be the best to everybody. I can't necessarily say that I'm successful at it, but
I think that's what's important is, people are always worried about how other people perceive them, but really, if you want to change the world, you change yourself. And that's how the world gets changed. And we're doing that. And but striving for the message of importance here is that you should work on yourself, trust your own perspectives. And if you don't, that's something you need to work on yourself and not
mhm.
bring somebody in to validate, you.
Absolutely. And it's not that I'm perfect in all realms. I guarantee you,
Mm-mm.
I screw up in that and time again.
Me too.
Difference is I just try.
Right.
I recognize my failures and my shortcomings as they happen. Maybe
Mm.
not always the most graciously, but still.
Eventually. That's what I like to say. You got to go through the stages of getting butthurt, but if you know you're going through the stages, you can go through them pretty quickly and get to the realization that, it was just honest feedback.
Oh yeah, and that's been something that I've had to learn how to separate a lot of times. Is that I get it's in the realm of relationships, whether it's in business or in life, just it's hard not to take some things personally because you feel
Mm-hmm.
that, whatever it is that you're being, critiqued or criticized on is something that's very personal to you. And sometimes it's like you literally just have to sit back and go, yep, nope, this is literally a business thing. Don't
Right.
take this personally. It's, you think about it, it's like you get that, you need to talk to somebody and you go to talk to them and they are busy and they're like, hey, not now. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, they don't like me. What am I going to do?
Right.
And it's like, literally, like they are so entrenched in what they're doing that literally the only words they could muster was not now. It's not anything personal on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's that they got stuff going on. Now, if it's consistently when they're free and it's not now, okay, that might be a little bit different.
I agree. It's about communicating. And that's what we
Hmm.
talked about with Autonomous Angel was when you're at a 10, there's no way you can have a rational discussion. But if you're the one initiating it and you're at a 10, nobody has anywhere to go with that sometimes except
Hmm.
to match you. And then I think that's where we get lost is in the communication. I had a friend, and when we were upset, I had a wife that did the same thing. She did not like confrontation face to face. But if you sent a text, it could be worked out because
Hmm.
it took all the emotion out of it for those two. And so that's how communication worked there. But I've had other people that, like I said, there's people that want you to leave them alone, and then there's
Hmm.
people that are telling you they want you to leave them alone, but they really want you to follow them so they can listen to you. Because what it boils down to in any conversation, debate, or argument is wanting to be heard. And
Hmm.
so many people get lost on their point and they stay on a single point because they haven't felt that they've been heard on that point. And so
Hmm.
they just get louder and louder with it. And you can't go forward in the discussion. You can't fix point 9 if you haven't addressed point 7, you know? That's
Right.
tough. That's tough for people. But what I do is I pick people I trust, like Jeffrey. Jeffrey could come at me with anything, and I would know that he's coming at me from love and not from like negativity. And I surround myself with people I can trust their opinions, even when
Right.
they're mad. If you know when somebody's mad and they're still staying within the rules of not trying to hurt you below the belt, then you know that's somebody you can trust to for their opinion.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure
Absolutely.
you and Debbie have discussions all the time, but they're resolved eventually. For me, it's always like, who is it more important to, me or the other person?
Oh, absolutely. We have those every so often, and sometimes Debbie and I have to talk by text. Sometimes it's like we're shutting this conversation down. We're
Yeah,
both going in
right.
circles. This is not working. This is not getting us anywhere.
Yep.
And sometimes it's just one person has an impassioned plea and the other just needs to sit there and listen. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
it's entirely different for everybody, and you just have to figure out what your communication style is and how it works with the other person that you're trying to communicate with. It's
Right.
because one of the things that people don't tend to think about is that you're going to come across people who have various communication barriers, whether it's visually, whether it's audibly, whether it's mentally, whether it's emotionally, and you just because you are saying the words that you want to say, that doesn't mean you're communicating. And that's a weird
Right.
concept to think about. It's a weird concept to think about because, we think about it from ourselves. Well, I'm saying the things that I need to say. But if the person that you're trying to communicate with cannot fully understand what you're trying to get at or what you're trying to say or what your needs are,
Right.
it's incumbent upon you to figure out how to adapt your what you're trying to say to reach the other person.
Yeah. And
And that's
what I learned was they just haven't learned how to communicate that way. You're speaking Japanese and they've learned Spanish, but eventually they'll learn how to communicate the way you're communicating once you compromise, like you're saying. So
mhm.
yeah, it comes down to like we weren't all raised with like the nuclear family. Some of us just had family that wasn't there, or family that communicated through anger or violence.
Yeah,
And
or family that went nuclear.
right. And so when you try and communicate with somebody that comes from that and you address them at a level 10, they only know how to communicate with anger and violence, and they've never learned another way. But then that's their thing to fix. They need to recognize that. You need to recognize that together. And that's the issue, not what you're arguing about. Sometimes it's the terms in which you argue. I had a mother-in-law and a father-in-law. They would bicker all the time. They would make fun of each other, call each other out, bicker back and forth, but that's what worked for them. They didn't let it bottle up, you know.
Hmm.
Other people, I bottle things up because sometimes it's not a big deal. It's only a big deal to me. And if I suppress it a little bit, then it'll normalize in my head. And I'll be like, all right, that person wasn't trying to hurt me. So my level 10 was a trigger from the past, not something for the future.
Hmm. Exactly.
Wow, exactly. So talking about arguments and beefs, I don't know if you know about this, but it has gone nuclear. And apparently Joe Rogan is in a ring with Neil Young, or Neil Young dragged Joe Rogan into the ring. And now
Hmm.
Spotify is like, wow, they've lost like $25 billion in the past 3 days over this, 12%. Have you heard anything about this? Because I am
Yep.
so confused. Originally, I thought Joe Rogan said, take Neil Young off. And that didn't make sense to me at all. And then
No.
I heard that Neil Young was just like, no, you get rid of Joe Rogan. And I was like, well, that's not fair either. And then I was like, well, Neil Young just left and didn't say to do anything. And I was
Hmm.
like, that makes sense. So what's the real story here? Because I am going crazy. Jeffrey, a third of our listeners are from Spotify. And if everybody's going to leave Spotify and it's going to be marked with the scarlet letter, that kind of sucks for us at Public Access America, the little people.
Right. So Joe Rogan versus Neil Young versus Joni Mitchell versus
Yeah.
I mean, actually there's a ton of people that are
The
involved in
Foo
this.
Fighters, right? Tom
There's
Petty,
there's
like,
there's a lot of people that are actually involved with this right now. So here's what happened.
can I tell
Joe
you
Rogan,
something? Can I
what?
tell you something real quick? We talked about this on the show, and little Kevin was like, "Who's Neil Young?" And I was like, "Oh my God."
It's like, oh, come on. Am I really
Anyway,
that old?
right.
So so the story is that Joe Rogan had some guy on his show that is pretty much the message was very anti-vax, anti-science. Um, it wasn't good. I haven't disclosure. I have not listened to the podcast. I have no idea what was said. Um, but it seems to be that there was some pretty clear messaging about the problem. Either it was against vaccines and or vaccine mandates. And Neil Young said, "Look, Spotify, you have somebody on here who's spreading deadly misinformation, and you can either keep them or you can keep my library, but you can't have both."
That's
And
that sounds fair to me, actually.
and so what ends up happening is Spotify then goes, okay, I guess we're turning your library over, because you know Spotify they paid like $100 million to exclusively have Rogan's podcast. So the money
Ah,
they make off of Neil Young is nothing. It's very little. So they so after Neil Young said, you can't have both, and then they started to take Neil Young stuff off, a bunch of the older musicians have started to come out of the woodwork and say, nope, you're taking my stuff off too. You know,
right.
in which case, this is one of those things where, this is a tough, very, very, very tough subject. So let's start with let's start with Jason. Do you know what freedom of speech is?
I do. That's what we're based on.
So what is freedom of speech?
I get to say whatever I want to say as long as I don't endanger country or community.
And
So does everybody else.
and
I don't know.
so what people often think of when it comes to freedom of speech is this idea that I get to say whatever I want. However, we've had rulings to the contrary that says, for example, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater.
Right,
That's not freedom of speech, or you can't say anti-Semitic things when there is a call to violence.
right. You
Specifically,
can't call to violence.
specifically though, what freedom of speech is that the government cannot censor you.
Right, right.
The government cannot tell you what you can and cannot say. And that in and of itself has been one of the biggest rows that we have seen, because across uh many countries, what you're seeing is the government applying pressure on the ability for people to find anti-vax messaging. Now,
Hmm.
corporations here in the United States have been applying that differently. And I say that because every social media platform kind of has their own metric of what constitutes as dangerous.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, you get Twitter, who's banning Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Um, you get YouTube pulling ads from candidates that are, talking about the big lie
Hmm.
and
Alex
anti-vax.
Jones and all that. Hmm.
And so, you have a bunch of people screaming, "Hey, that's, you're infringing upon my freedom of speech." And it's like, well, if you can make the case that the government is requiring these institutions, these corporations to take down this, then I would say yes, you would have a case that the government is infringing upon your free speech. However, if a platform is blocking you from being a part of the platform because of what you're saying, that's not the government infringing upon your freedom of speech. Now, I've gone rounds with several people about this, and what people, I'm applying a very, very, very conservative uh, application of freedom of speech. It's that the government cannot, you know, shut you down. They cannot tell you what you can and can't say.
Right.
So is there any reality to the government being the ones that are trying to shut down what people are saying? Now, I know that a bunch of people are saying, well, the Biden administration, no, the Biden administration has been, dumb enough to, not help their own cause, but they're not out there actually calling for YouTube to take people down. They're not calling for
Also,
Twitter to take.
Biden isn't a king, just like Trump shouldn't have been considered king. No one man should be able to fix everything or
Right.
tell you that he can. So Joe Biden not fixing everything isn't always a Joe Biden fault.
Right. And that's the thing is that, we have a very narrow ruling on what freedom of speech is for a reason. And I would argue that, if you want to keep something constitutionally conservative, then you have to leave in place what currently exists.
Yes.
And that is that the government cannot restrict your speech. Because if you start applying that to companies and organizations, this is where it starts to get tricky. Because then, if a company cannot restrict your speech, that means that companies now have to host everything from neo Nazis to communists,
Agree.
and they have to give them equal. I wouldn't say equal. They have to give them the airspace and apply whatever other metrics they have
Yeah,
equally in
of
terms of
course.
speech.
Of course. I don't
Now,
believe in
now
I
the
don't
idea.
believe we should hide things like Nazis or white supremacy. I think it's up to the people on the platform to decide whether that's what they want to read. You know what I mean?
And I think it's up to the people, but I also think it's up to the organizations, because let's be real honest. What is it that you want your platform to be known for? If you want your platform to be known for information, then you have to define what is information.
That's true. This
It,
stuff isn't up on LinkedIn, right?
right, exactly. Oh, well, at least that we know of yet.
I don't go on
Or
LinkedIn.
if you want your site to be known for family-friendly entertainment, obviously you're not going to be wanting to host, the kids' version of Kill the Jews, you know,
Right, right.
or Westboro Baptist Church, all faggots burn in hell, that sort of stuff. You
Hmm.
don't want to have those things as a part of your platform. So by companies like Facebook and Google and YouTube restricting that kind of stuff, it allows them to curate the experience that they want you to have. Now, does that mean that they get it right? Oh, hell no. Are you kidding? But at the same time, they are not restricting speech at the behest of the government.
Right.
Now, I guarantee you, and this is where I have to go. It's like, look at, if you want an example of what that actually looks like, I would go to China and their social media platform WeChat. Like there are certain things that you can try and type in, but it is immediately blocked. Like you can't say it, or if you find creative ways to say it, you might get a knock on the door.
Right. As
And
well as if you don't say the right thing, you can get in trouble. Like if you don't, there's the kids have a game that is government propaganda and you have to spread it or you're in penalty. You're not doing well enough. It's weird the way they control the media that way.
so, and that's the thing is that people have this weird obsession with commies and Nazis that they don't actually understand. And there's been a couple of interviews of people on the streets where they're saying things, and it's like you realize these two ideas are diametrically opposed. Like
Hmm.
it's like if your point is that you're living under an authoritarian regime, okay, we can work with that. But if your idea is that you have people's control of the state, and I say people's in quotes,
Right.
versus the state's controls of the state, of
Of the
industry
people. Right.
and the people, it's like, okay, so if your issue is authoritarianism, hey, I can work with that. I don't really enjoy authoritarianism either.
Right. But
But the
their
idea that
version
they're
of
commies or Nazis are just wild, and their idea of what authoritarianism looks like is like so fucking skewed. It's like this it's insane what people think
yes.
of.
They think it's just cutting the red tape, one man getting everything done, but that's not the way it is. In in Russia, the people work for the state. In the United States, the state works for the people. And theoretically, ideally,
Theoretically,
and
ideally.
so that's the thing. People want they want a man that can cut the red tape like Vladimir Putin, but they don't want the oppression that comes with him, and that's not how it works. You
Well,
know what I mean?
the thing is that to put it into perspective, Putin cuts the red tape while putting up a bunch of other tape around. You know,
Agreed.
and that's
Agreed.
and that's the thing is that everybody's focused on the tape that's being cut, that they completely miss all of the other boundaries that are being set.
Yeah.
Here, I'm all about cutting red tape. Because there's a lot of red tape out there that has been whether you want to call it CRT or whether you want to
Right.
call it just, people in power trying to stay in power.
Hmm.
There's been a lot of red tape put in place to keep people from being able to move. Like, it's just one of my memories that just popped up. Last year at this time, we were talking about GameStop and the stock market and how,
Right.
and you want to know what is funny about all of that? Is that in a place where people pride themselves on the idea of capitalism, almost every senator started freaking out about the idea of a bunch of internet nerds fucking with the stock market because they
Right.
figured out the game. And they immediately were talking about all of the red tape that they were going to put up in order to you make sure that this didn't happen again. It's like, why? A bunch of people figured out how to make their own money using the same system that you did. It's just that they communicated en masse, and you didn't like it because it became a fucking meme.
Well,
Whereas, what everybody's been pissed about is, senators and House reps being able to manipulate the stock market based on,
yeah,
their
exactly.
own investments and their own needs. We watched throughout the pandemic as people would sell some set of stocks and buy other stocks, and then magically they're making a ton of fucking money.
That's
Yet when a
right.
bunch of internet nerds think fucking GameStop is hilarious, you get pissed?
It,
Really?
well, of course, because you like being the party until somebody else crashes it, and then everybody knows about the party, and it's not a party anymore. Like
But
40
right.
percent of Congress trades stocks, and there's no penalty for that. There's a $200 fine if you don't um, communicate with the ethics board if they ask you to. A $200 fine once, and Nancy Pelosi's against it, but there's a bill, and it's growing with support to get people out of
Yep.
people in government or out of positions of power away from stocks, which I agree with. So,
Absolutely.
and I
And
want to
that's
say
got a lot of bipartisan support for it too.
it does, it's growing. And like what I noticed was as soon as this new feature came up that says do not track me, um, Snapchat stock went down $50. It was at 80 something. Now it's down at 20 something. And that's my stock. But you know what? that's my tracking, that's my privacy, and I don't care losing that much money on my privacy, because I think that companies need to learn to find a way to work within the rules instead of creating new ways that rules haven't been made for. Because I don't believe in making rules, I believe in self-governance, because I don't want somebody coming in and averaging it out. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like there's certain things that are niches, and enjoy that niche. But when somebody comes and complains about, like, Gab, right? I don't care. White supremacists, go and enjoy your Gab fest. I don't care. Keep it quiet so people don't regulate you, because when it comes out that you're disgusting, everybody's going to want to knock you down, you
The
know?
new, or as I like to call it, the newest FBI watch list.
Right. That's exactly my point. And so you shouldn't be if you want better gun regulations, do it yourself before somebody does it. Don't depend
Hmm.
on Donald Trump and Joe Biden to do this shit. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
not fair to them. Like Joe Biden's rating is at 33%. And I'm like, it's because people want him to trim their toenails. Like their pizza was late. It's Joe Biden's fault. Oh, the gas cost more. It's Joe Biden's fault. Oh, I couldn't sleep last night. It's Joe Biden's fault. Fuck, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, and I will say this: the Democrats have done pretty much nothing and have made themselves an easy target. The biggest thing that they've been able to get passed is, the infrastructure bill,
mhm.
and
And the
now it's
Recovery Act.
and now it's people trying to figure out how in the hell that's going to actually improve their daily life.
Yeah, until a bridge
It's
falls down in Pittsburgh and the president's there to
I
go
mean,
see.
that's fucking irony at its finest.
Yeah.
You
But it's
know,
perfect. It worked until
but
the conspiracies came out that he planned it.
well, of course, that's it's like we have a bridge out here in Seattle that, out of a possible 100 points, it scored a fucking 9. I mean, it's like that bad. And then
Right.
we had a bridge that fell apart here, like, was it a year and a half ago, a year ago, and they're finally getting that fixed.
Mhm.
It's
It's just weird to me that, like, nothing is more than any other president has ever done, but the way the Democrats went about it just makes it feel like garbage. Like
hmm.
Bernie Sanders saying, "Here's an almost $7 trillion thing that'll fix everything." Yay! And 3.5 we're gonna get this. No, 1.75. No, well, we got something. And it was like
Hmm.
the rescue plan helped a lot of people do a lot of things, and
Hmm.
Build Back Better was gonna institutionalize some of that stuff. He didn't get it all done, but he got a lot more done than Donald Trump did.
Well,
You
and
know
I
what I
think,
mean?
and here's the thing is like everybody has like the idea that this was ever going to get through omnibus was just fucking hilarious to me to begin
Right.
with.
That's what I'm
And
saying. That's the mistake of Democrats, you know?
absolutely. And here's the thing is that, I've been trying to get people to recognize this. It's that, there are priorities out there that actually fit, Republican bills, things that actually like are
Oh
going to
yeah.
improve the things that they need. Infrastructure is a big one. And Mitch McConnell was a big pusher for the infrastructure bill simply because, he knew that Kentucky needed money.
He didn't want to brag. He didn't want to lie about bragging about it. He wanted to actually brag about it.
Right. And that was the thing is that, there are some wins out there that Republicans and Democrats can actually get together and make those things happen.
Heck yeah.
But when you throw it all together, of course one party's gonna fucking object to it. You see it
Yeah.
constantly. It's this isn't new.
Right.
It's that, hey, why don't we figure out, it's like, Build Back Better is a series of votes on various topics,
Right.
and part one is infrastructure, part two is business, part three is social, part four is
The
climate,
Green New Deal. Right. This is when people were saying the Green New Deal is just too huge. That's what this is. It's the culmination of part of the Green New Deal that people were complaining about with other stuff. And Mitt Romney's he wants affordable childcare. He has a bill that's more progressive than what's in Build Back Better. So
Mhm.
there's ways around it, but working with a party whose overarching directive is do not work with Democrats is the tough part. You need to peel them away, which reminds me of something Tucker Carlson did. There's an influential person of the week for me, somebody that showed me the stark differences in America. And it was Tucker Carlson saying,
Mhm.
why should I care about Ukraine being invaded by Russia when I'm rooting for Russia? I think time stopped in that moment, Jeffrey. And I
Mhm.
think I think all Republicans considered what he just asked. And I think a certain portion are pivoting away and working with Democrats on this issue of Russia invading Ukraine. And
Right.
that's a bigger thing because he made the stark difference. It's not this rhetoric about vaccines. It's, are you with America or are you with Russia? And that difference we can all get on board with, Republicans and Democrats alike.
Absolutely.
We should want to be against any invasion of any country anywhere.
And that and we need to make it clear that it's not just, we've got our own sins to learn from in this process too,
Oh, heck yeah.
you know. So yeah, that was a very stark sentence that I
Right.
think woke up a lot of people
I mean,
in that realm.
is America perfect? Hell no. Is it better than Russia? Hell yeah.
A
Nobody
lot of
wants to
ways.
be communist, you know? Nobody. I can't think of anybody that wants to be communist that isn't a part of the government system of communism.
Well, it's because, in the words of George Orwell, some pigs are more equal than others.
Right. I love Animal Farm. It's one of the few books I've read and reread.
It's a great book and a great look at what communism looks like. And I would argue that it's a great look at what any government in general looks like. Whether
Right.
it's a capitalistic government, whether it's a communist government, whether
Hmm.
it's democratic socialism or pure socialist government.
Yeah.
Like, you look at the top, the people at the top are more equal than the people at, the very bottom. It's
Right.
clear they have more access, they have more opportunity. And the question becomes, are they are they more equal because they have more access, because they're given that? And why then can the average person not be given that same access? You think about it, all of the fighting over healthcare, and what do senators and house reps and presidents all get, and justices?
Yeah.
Their health
Nothing.
care is completely paid for.
Oh
They'll
yeah, of
never have to
course.
worry about it. And so you have all of these people who have this thing saying, nah, the general public doesn't need it. Okay, well, fuck you. You don't need it either.
Well, that's just what I think Donald Trump did was say, we're going to get rid of the ACA. You're going to tell me what you want. And everybody in America went, don't know. And the people that did think about it ahead of time and said, make a healthcare a la carte, those are the people that won the day. My friend, yeah, he can get ACA insurance. You know what the cheapest is? $600 for catastrophic, which means nothing else is covered other than catastrophic. That's
Mhm.
horrible. That's not healthcare, Mike Quigley.
No,
Sorry. But
no, and like
the thing is we know what those people are going to plan. We know what they're going to do, the people you're talking about. And the people
Mhm.
down here, we aren't talking. They're keeping us so divided that we can't come up with something. So when they say, what do you want? We're like, okay, here's what I want. You know what I mean? Here's my list as a disabled person. Here's their list as a minority. Here's their list as a migrant. We don't have that. They keep us in limbo, worrying about all these little things when we never come up with an overarching plan to offer them.
Mhm. And one of the things that I think too is that we have to have the means to allow, I would say, the wealthier to invest in projects that are obviously going to benefit people. Like, I don't know if you saw
Agreed.
this, but the Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban has launched a generic pharmaceutical company that is taking some of these generics that have, experienced, catastrophic price increases, and he's,
Right.
capping them, you know, at their possible cheapest. So he's like, he's he's investing in uh, production and investing in creating something that will come to market and have an immediate effect. And basically his line was is that, he saw what Pharma Bro did to this one particular medication that was, $35 a bottle, and then he made it 700.
Right.
And he's like, that, no, that's not right. And so now he has started on that venture. And uh I forget when he said that they're going to be offering the medications. I want to say it was like really soon.
Cool.
But you know, that's one way in which you can immediately affect, people's lives, and we have to figure out ways in which I wouldn't necessarily say we punish people like, Pharmadouche for trying to jack up prices like that, but we give people ways to sit down and go, okay, yeah, I guess you can charge $700 for that, bottle of life-saving medicine. Our company is not going to do that, and you're going to go out of business. Bye.
Exactly. I mean, Amazon, I think Mark Cuban's doing that because Amazon started the pharmaceutical deliveries. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Which
I mean,
revolutionizes pharmaceuticals for someone like me that's shut in and can't go to the store to get them, you know?
absolutely. And I think that's one of the more fantastic things. I know Walmart's working on their own pharmacies. Their own pharmaceuticals, and that's the thing is that as you've watched medications get unruly expensive, what we have seen is that they're really the only methodology that has truly worked in keeping prices low has been that
Competition.
has been competition, and that competition is trying to compete with business for the federal government.
Hmm.
When you have a sole source that's buying your medication, it becomes incumbent upon you to actually go out and request, you know, give the best pricing to the federal government. But here we don't have that.
Right.
So if you can create this quote unquote third pathway of, what we analyze what everybody's expenses are, what everybody's paying across the world for this medication, and that's what we're going to offer as the ceiling.
Right.
Because think about it, like, if for a country as rich as the United States, what we should be seeing is that the cheapest price of medication, of viable medication in the US, should be the lowest price that we find across the world. That should be the ceiling.
Agreed. But the thing is like the generics were created because a drug company needed to recoup their research costs. But then once they did that, it became generic, and that couldn't be the price of that wouldn't be raised. It was a generic price, and there was a floor, but then somebody raised the floor. But like you said, never offers a ceiling. There's no bracket in America. It's always a new floor. It's never
Right.
a new
and
ceiling.
that's the thing is that when it comes to data analysis in that realm is that that's what I looked at across multiple hospitals, was is that it's like, okay, here's the price of this drug across multiple hospitals. This is our ceiling right here. and
Right.
it and if this company wants to do business with all of these hospitals, this is the max they can charge, and let's go from there.
Right. I wish there was a max charge on things like MRI machines that have been paid for already, or all these
Oh,
PET
that's
scans. Like I think that's where
oh,
the real rape happens in medicine.
oh,
You
well, I
know?
mean, well, if there was ever
Sorry, we're
something,
drifting into a field that was
well, if there's,
unplanned.
I mean, that's just us in general. If there was ever a real screw up of the ACA, it was taxing, new equipment, new medical equipment. Like, if your idea is that you want to be able to provide more affordable care, raising the costs of the things that are going to provide more affordable care does not lend to more affordable care. It keeps prices artificially high because you're trying to figure out how to pay for something that shouldn't be paid from through the system that you're literally just saying, okay, we're going to make your cost quote unquote cheaper by raising prices over here in the same system. That doesn't make any
Right,
sense.
right.
So
No company is obligated to take a loss. Like nowhere in the world, well, nowhere in the United States is a company obligated to take a loss, you know?
Well, and that's where the basic failings of economics come in, is that everybody thinks, oh, well, this company's going to have to do this, that, and the other, and hooray, it's going to. No, it's not. Those taxes that they're going to pay are going to get passed on to you. And every single time that it happens, they all get the same surprised Pikachu face, like, oh
Yeah,
my God, I can't believe that my costs went up. It's like, they're passing this stuff on. There is no obligation for them to pass on, for them to take a loss. There is none.
right.
Because what happens if they take a loss? They're going out of business, period. So they're going to recuperate their costs. Now, you could talk about what you could have the conversation of what is a maximum profit level. You could have that conversation, but there again, the question is, for any business is, if you're stuck at a maximum profit level, then you're only ever going to offer one service.
That just means there's going to be the money's going to squeeze out in other areas. Okay, so we can only have this much profit, so we'll invest it over here in this shell company in the Cayman Islands, or it eliminates the possibility of that money going actually anywhere around
Hmm.
America to make a difference, And
Absolutely.
I got Jeffrey, there is Democratic trolls. Now, I don't know if they're just weird trolls that troll the troll, or if they're Republican MAGA trolls that realize nobody's listening to them, but there's trolls. And I had a comment on Ilhan Omar's post that said, if you're going to offer Medicare for all, you need to reform Medicare first. And people were like, it is, read the bill, read the bill, read the bill. And it dawned on me, there was about 5 trolls that put a link in there and then were forcing me to click on it, and I wouldn't, and they were ableist as fuck. I was like, I can't read the bill. I have macular degeneration, but thank you for the information. And they were just like, well, get off your cross. And I was like, you're not Democrats. Like, Democrats don't fight like that. That's a special brand. Like, I don't even think like conservative Republicans do that. I think the trolls, or the people that want to be trolls, like the Russian farm trolls, or the
The troll
um,
farm, yeah.
or whatever. I don't know where they're from. They could be a 400-pound guy in his bed. It doesn't really matter to me. They're all trying to emulate the same thing, and it's to get you to go to a link, and I don't like that at all. But
Mm-mm.
Ilhan Omar has a bill to reform Medicare, and good. I'm glad she does. She didn't mention it in her tweet, and I didn't know it existed. Somebody told me it did. I'm happy to read it eventually, but I wasn't going to read it just because I got pushed that way. And I had a lot of support too, by the way, on my
Hmm.
reform it, because like I'm saying, there's things that Medicare just has automatically to lower costs that they wouldn't need to do if they were the sole proprietor, like you
Hmm.
said, negotiating. They wouldn't restrict me to one test strip a day to save costs if they were the sole proprietor and could negotiate the price of test strips down to a level where I could take 3 a day. So
Hmm.
that's what we need to do. I'm not saying abolish Medicare, and I'm not saying like bloat it up. What I'm saying is reform it, getting running, tune up the engine, put in the new spark plugs, change your filters, and then go for gold.
Yep. Because that's the thing is like, when it comes to any other government provision, it's like, they have a very specific level of cost that they're required to meet, and they have very
Mhm.
specific industries that meet those costs. And so the idea that, Medicare can't be the sole negotiator of those costs, I mean,
It just needs to be a bill in Senate. You know what I mean?
yeah, that's exactly it. And so it's unfortunately it's going to be one of those things where you're going to see a lot of fighting over Medicare, and honestly, like the number of people I see that are supporting Medicare for all right now, I'm like, man, you don't know anybody on Medicare, do you?
Exactly. Well, it's the simple conspiracy theory rhetoric. You told me this, I think, that Republicans will fall for a political conspiracy, whereas Democrats will fall for more of a social justice conspiracy.
Hmm.
And so defund the police, Medicare for all. These are easy things that simple people can jump on, but they never have any realization that someday they may be on it themselves.
Exactly.
I mean, what's the VA for? What the fuck is the VA for? It's for substandard care for a subsection of our country. We could just make Medicare V plan and fold that fucking $1 billion into a Medicare for all system. Nobody wants that though. No, don't do that to our veterans. What, give them better health care? Like, you know what I mean?
Right. And on top of that, then you have two separate groups of people who are now getting better negotiated pricing
Right.
in terms of all of their services.
And
So
the last VA building to be built was built in 1940s. Like, they have not increased their infrastructure, even though they've increased their budget for managemental expenses, but they've never let it trickle down into infrastructure. So let's fold that into Medicare for all. Let's do that. You know what I mean? I like that. Let's give homeless people health care and call it fucking H. I don't care what we call it, but let's get people insured.
I mean, that would be that would be the ideal, is that, like we've talked about many times, there's a lot of things that could be addressed, and addressed early.
Hmm.
But we would rather wait until the fucking engine falls out and then be like, well, what if I change the oil
Right.
with the fucking
Like
engine laying on the ground?
I was talking in during that autonomous angel thing, Adam said something. I love you, Adam, but I think we have a fundamental certain disagreement, and I think I figured it out on the toilet today. He doesn't like homeless people because he had a bad experience with the situation that homeless people leave. I don't like homelessness. I don't like the mess that homelessness leaves. I don't blame the homeless for homelessness. I think he does. And I think that's an issue with a lot of things. I don't
I
know
mean,
how I got there, but we need to stop blaming the people involved in like we need to stop blaming the mentally ill for not having an outlet for recovery and then reacting because of their mental illness. Like Dan Savage said, pedophiles are only pedophiles when they can't find a resource to not be a pedophile. And so denying them those resources just creates more pedophiles. Denying that it's homelessness and not homeless just denies the fact that homelessness is the problem.
well, and that's one of those things, like, at a certain point, then you get to the chicken and the egg discussion. you know what is keeping somebody homeless? Is it the fact that they don't have a home, or is it the fact that they're doing things that would make them homeless? And you can sit there and go around in circles, and I think that's where most people sit, is that it's the fact that they don't have. You got people that go, oh, it's the fact that they don't have a home, and so that's why they're doing all of these things. Then you got another group of people going, well, it's them doing all of these things, and that's why they're homeless. It's like, okay, so you're going to sit there and do this and run around in a circle with each other until
Right,
you go, how do you break that? How do you stop this from being a cycle?
right.
And the answer is not an easy one, because
It's not systemic, it's individual.
well, here's the thing, is that if you supply someone with just a home, just somewhere where they can live, that doesn't get them out of the things that they're doing that would make them homeless. And
Right,
if you just treat the person for whatever the cause is, like whatever is going on that's keeping them homeless, that doesn't give them the access to a home. Because there are several factors out there. It's like you have to treat this in tandem. It's like
right,
you have to give somebody the space to live sheltered, and you have to give them the resources that would keep them from slipping back into the things that create homelessness. It's not one or the other. It has to be both,
right,
because we all know people that have homes and they're trash because they're in the throes of whatever. But we
right,
also know people who are homeless that are trying to get on their feet, and they can't because they don't have the roof over the head, they don't have the physical address, they don't have the access to things like regular hygiene in order
right,
to keep themselves presentable for their job. And so you can sit there and blame one or the other very easily and do absolutely nothing. And that's where people get frustrated. And so it's like, I can see both perspectives because I've been at both sides of this. I've been well, they're just doing stupid shit and that's why they're homeless. And then you're like, and then I was like, wait, well, if you don't have an address, you can't get a job. And if you can't get a job, you're gonna be homeless.
right.
And then it's like, well, no, you have to solve this problem in tandem. It's not one or the other, it's both.
And
And
think
if you
about
don't
think
just dig in on that, you're just literally chasing your fucking tail.
right, but think about how a homeless person gets your attention to address homelessness. He shits on your sidewalk. You know what I mean? He becomes a nuisance. He becomes a problem because desperately he wants you to come up with a solution. The problem is a government funds organizations to address homelessness, and they all fall into a niche. We're going to help the homeless women. That's good. We're going to house teenagers. That's good. But what it does is it just creates a normalcy of homelessness. You're falling into a system. You're not really addressing it. You're just housing them, you know? And sometimes a teenager that's getting beat on by her dad or sexually abused by her dad would choose homelessness over the housing that they have, you
Right.
know. And not all the time, just because somebody has a roof over their head, that doesn't mean they're not homeless. Like you said, somebody renting a room is only dependent on the money they're making that week to be housed. That doesn't mean you have a home, you
Hmm.
know. And you need to tackle that individually. I'm sorry, I'll wrap up
No,
on that. You need to talk to one person and say, why are you homeless? We got foreclosed on in this economy. Okay, well, let's work you towards that. You could fundamentally do something. You have an education and a career. You fell through a crack. Let's pick you up. But then there's going to be that guy, why are you homeless? And he's going to be like, blah 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 blah, and shit on your foot. That person needs separate help, but they prefer homelessness. You know what I mean? And once it's down to that group, we can battle that group. But that teenager shouldn't fall into the guy shitting on the sidewalk. That family shouldn't fall into the same demographic as that
yeah.
guy. You
And
know what I
that's
mean?
and that's the reality is that, you know, you need the housing and then you need the help, and they have to work in tandem. Great, let's have organizations that are, you know, you have a housing segment for kids, and you have somebody who comes in and works with them individually
Right.
and gets them caught up to where, you know, maybe they're finally getting their GED, or they're finally going to, you know, have, you know, stable housing until they find a, you know, a reliable system. I mean, let's be real honest. Even like in the foster care system, not only is it,
Right.
not only are availabilities few and far between, but a lot of them are less than ideal.
Right. And that's
And
the same with for-profit incarceration. These are three demographics that just need individual help. And these organizations wait for these people to
mhm,
fall to them instead of going to the people. And that's a problem for me. You have these people that are homeless, you know where they are. You have these people that are in a foster system, you know where they are. You can help them at the point that they're at. You shouldn't be expecting somebody to travel your county looking for an empty bed. You know what I
right,
mean? That's not something a homeless person can do, but you can go out into the homeless community and say, hey, we have 10 beds, we have 9 beds, and get those people where they need to be, and then get
right,
them back to where they were. You know what
right.
I mean?
And that's the real answer is that, you know, when you have the space that is going to be, it's temporary, but it's permanent enough that somebody's going
Hmm.
to be able to get on their feet and work on the issues that they have, that they need to. They know that they're not going to be trying to hopefully make the shelter bed in time, or that, you know, the resource that's helping them deal with mental health, drug addiction, or, you know, even just the fact that they fell on a hard fucking time, you
Right.
know, there's so much there that, you know, if you have consistent access to those things, people are going to be able to build themselves out of homelessness. The problem is that the way that the system currently works doesn't do that, and
Right.
there is more benefit to the system in keeping people on the system and homeless than there is to them actually addressing these issues. And
Yeah.
until that metric changes for the system, i.e., we start punishing our system by for not addressing these problems,
Right.
we're going to consistently see them, and we're not going to see the solutions that we've been asking and demanding for. Or, you know, we're going to, or if we keep continually rewarding half-assed efforts.
Right. I mean, uh, Washington State offers vouchers for homeless veterans. They can give that voucher to anyone that has an apartment and they'll take it. The problem is how is that veteran supposed to know where that voucher is? Right? How is he
Mhm.
supposed to gonna get across town to get it? And then how does he get it the next month and the next month? You're not bringing it to him and he has no way of registering for it, right? And it's like we offer it, oh yay, we feel good. And I see that happened with the stimulus. Here's $5 trillion for people to stay in their apartments. Oh, but we're making it impossible for you to apply for it. Oh, nobody used it. We're going to dump it into something else. And it's
Hmm.
this cycle of, oh, we're helping, but not really helping. We're
Exactly.
here on an island. Come to us.
Exactly. And that's been the answers, is that, you're relying on a bunch of people who have an incredible lack of access to
Yeah,
information about the services that they need, and all you're doing is saying, look, we have the services but nobody's coming to us. Yeah,
right,
that's the problem, is that you're expecting people to come to you. And so what you end up doing is you end up taking that money and you end up investing it elsewhere, that's not actually addressing the initial issue that money was collected for. And I think
right,
that's why taxpayers get so frustrated, is that they're seeing that the money that is taken from them is not impacting the thing that they were told that it would impact. And the system itself is making damn sure that they're not going out of their way to actually address the problem.
right. And the other thing is that I learned was that Autonomous Angel, when she became homeless, she didn't have the family system to fall back on. Like there isn't, we don't all have that safety net. I think I started with this, and I'm going to end it
Hmm.
on this conversation on that. We don't have family to fall back on because our family didn't have family to fall back on because they didn't have the resources to better themselves, you know? And in the southern states, that's a largely harder thing for a minority. You know what I mean? Just
Hmm.
it's a tough thing. And so, but there's 560,000 homeless people in the US today. I just don't see that as being a problem if 350 million people figured that if we just came to them and gave them a blanket and fucking listened to them and then helped them solve their problems. Like if Uber just picked up homeless people and drove them to the place that they needed to be, like just, I don't know how to connect people, the services, with the people that need the services, but that's the issue, I think. And I'm glad we figured that out. I
Hmm.
did not expect to talk about homelessness. Did you have anything to say on the Spotify issue?
Well, I mean, like anything else, you have your own agency to decide what you throw your money at, whether that's by, buying a musician's album and storing it on your phone, or by, having a monthly subscription to Spotify. Like everything else, you have to decide what falls within your set of values. And if Spotify, you know, hosting somebody who's allowing vax and anti-science uh, talk to be proliferated on their platform, that's up to you whether or not you want to spend the money on that. That is entirely yours. I will say that I don't know that there's necessarily a streamer out there that's going to offer a better solution, because let's face it, Apple has Joe Rogan. Um, I believe I know that YouTube has Joe Rogan on it. It's not that you can't find it. That's
But
still there.
do you think Google is better than Apple, is better than whoever has Spotify? Like Apple uses slave labor for their products. Like I don't know.
Like
Google
that's
is Google. They're the surveillance state. Like I don't know. You know what I mean?
and that's the reality, is that when you look at each of these platforms, you're not necessarily getting a better answer between any single one of them. You're
Right.
just getting a different answer. And so the question is, is the platform that you're spending your money on worthy of you spending your money on them? And that's an individual discussion that you have to have with yourself, and you have
Agreed.
to reckon with the answer to that. So whether or not you choose to continue to have Spotify, whether or not you decide you're going to get something else, that's entirely up to you. But
Mhm. I will say
there's
the same process that you're using to diminish Joe Rogan is the same process that's diminishing the counterpoint to Joe Rogan, and that's us. Like you might be trying to get fewer people to listen to Joe Rogan, but in the process, the people, there's the counterpoints that are on Spotify to Joe Rogan are also being diminished disproportionately because we have fewer listeners. So you're going to end up, you might get rid of 1 million listeners from Joe Rogan, but that's going to eliminate our 1 million, and it's just going to hurt the cause. And
Mhm.
Spotify knows this, so do what you want, but you're hurting a lot and Neil Young, it seems like two people are getting attention. Neil Young
Mhm.
is going to have a record profit this year. Joe Rogan is going to have a record listenership this year, but millions of small artists, bands, podcasters, entertainers, they're going to be hurt really bad by this. And that's what I
Mhm.
feel. That's who I feel for.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to Public Access America. We will be back Sunday. All right. And we're back, and I love it. My name is Jason. His name is Jeffrey, and their names are unknown, but there's 16,000 of them around our country right now. They're not called kids in cages anymore. They're called kids in detention centers, but they're they're experiencing so much mental trauma that I really wanted to talk about it. There was a great article that I shared with Jeffrey because I wanted to talk about it, but it wasn't real fact heavy. I mean, it was factual, but there wasn't a lot of statistics for me to grab onto, and that's what I like to do is grab the numbers. There's a lot of kids experiencing a lot of traumas, Jeffrey, and you and I,
Mhm.
we bring it up, but we never directly talk about it, you know?
Mhm.
Why is it that people forgot that these kids exist?
Because it magically became all better now that Papa Joe is president of the United States.
Okay, but not one man can fix it. We talked about that in our last episode. So what are we gonna do? You know?
Well, if you're the federal
Shoot,
government,
man.
next to nothing, like usual. I mean, what incentive do they have now that the screaming and the pressure isn't on them the same way that it was? The outrage lasted long enough to get Trump, ousted, but it didn't
Right,
last long enough to actually fix the issue.
right. These are kids in tent camps. They're cutting themselves. They're trying to run away. They're monitored 24/7. They have no privacy. They're trapped. They can't leave. Um, they're they're suffering, man. PTSD, and there's got to be a better way. How did we do this like before Trump? What happened to these unaccompanied minors? That we didn't collect them so that there was 14,000 of them, right? And
No, we did collect them. That's
and a
the
lot
thing.
of
That
these
this
a lot of
program
these
was
kids have families that they want to go to, and the problem again is the lack of them having access to the process, and so that's something we need to work on. But what did we do beforehand? Sorry, not to cut you off.
unfortunately this program was actually started under the Obama administration. And
But
so
nice
it's
and polite, right?
so unfortunately it is not it wasn't new under Trump. It just experienced a new level of cruelty under Trump.
Sure, sure,
Um,
sure.
but we took the quote unquote Trump cruelty out of it, and we've kept it pretty much the same.
Okay, and then quieted down about it because nobody really cares about migrants.
No, no, we were more pissed about Trump than we were actually about the actual issue at hand.
Is that what it was? It was just the guy and not the actual issue.
Yeah, and basically, what happened was is that, we knew that this was happening, but what happened was is that you had this directive come out that said you had to separate them, um, and they did it with such a line of cruelty that it made it when it finally made it to the news, people were outraged. Well, people on the left were outraged. Um, but we under Trump the process ended, but we were still pissed about it. you know so I mean, like that process stopped. I want to say in like 2018, 2019, I think, is when it finally stopped. And then it still existed, like the level of cruelty, quote unquote, didn't change. And then when we finally got a new president elected, we continued to not change anything.
Right.
So the issue never changed. It's the anger and outrage at the person went away because the person went away. If you think for one second that if Trump were to get reelected again, that this wouldn't magically come back up again, I would laugh you out of the building, because let's be real honest, this is still happening, and the Republicans would have every right to be like, look, he didn't change anything.
He really didn't. But like, I don't know. I don't know when it happened, but it went from families coming, unaccompanied minors coming, and them having two separate directions into the US. Like a family could come in, declare amnesty, go through a system, come out and wait for their trial, with family. That's what my family did. And then unaccompanied minors, they went into a separate processing because they were minors. But then Trump decided to take the minors from the adults and the families and process them differently, send the families back, but keep the kids, which I thought was a weird thing to do. And then Biden still has all of those kids that we kept. And now there's more unaccompanied kids coming. And now we're sending the families united back into Mexico to wait. And that's devastating these families just as much as the kids that are being incarcerated. Like it's it's a tough thing. Some of these kids, they're leaving horrible situations and traveling through horrible situations just to end up in a horrible situation, you know?
Mm-hmm.
To me, I don't know how other people see it. Like, I don't know if you see a 16-year-old girl that just came from Guatemala because her fucking family was killed by militants is like scary, you know?
Well, I mean, this is where this is this is another one of those. This isn't easy, and you have this very circular discussion going on that doesn't
Mhm.
lend to solving the problem at all. Like much like we talked about in the last, and I approach this from two sides because really, there are only two sides that are dictating,
Right.
what's happening. You have the right going that, she's unaccompanied, and and that, this is illegal and this, that, and the other, and they need to go back to where they came from. And then
You
you have
broke a
this group
law.
going, well, they're leaving a place that is hell on earth, and in order to survive, they're willing to break the laws of other countries, because it's either that or death.
Right.
And and this is where I go, okay, the pro-life side doesn't tend to very, do a whole lot of things that tell me they're very pro-life.
That's what I
Just
say.
put
They're depopulation with 5% of their base being evangelist and believing pro-life. Pro-life
I
is just a way to keep the evangelists, but there nothing about them says pro-life.
like just call yourself anti-abortion. It's a lot easier and it's very
Mhm.
focused. You don't like abortion, great, cool. Don't
Right.
tell me you're pro-life, but then you have all of these policies that consistently kill people,
Right.
like, or starve people, or put them in harm's way. That's not very pro-life.
Right.
I and it's time to start calling it what it is. And I'm going to make the same plea to the left as well. Stop calling yourself pro-life, but then putting in all of these policies that are supposed to help people, but then make it impossible for them to actually access these programs.
Right.
That's not very pro-life of you either. And so, like,
And
this, let's get this fucking shit show out of the way. Stop
I
calling
want to, yeah,
yourself pro-life.
then I have one point, and that's that seeking amnesty isn't breaking the law, but in the Trump administration, crossing the border to do it became breaking the law. And
Yep.
so I don't want people to think that seeking amnesty is somehow illegal. It isn't. That's the proper
Seeking
channel.
asylum. Seeking asylum.
Seeking asylum. But crossing the line to do it, and I understand, but like you just said, the infrastructure to apply, sometimes you have to go to another country to apply for asylum here. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? You can't do it. Colombia won't allow you to apply for asylum here. You have to go to Honduras or the Dominican Republic to do it. And you're
Hmm.
exactly right. We say, yes, we have all this stuff on the other side of the river. Come here. And then we arrest them and go, ha.
Right. And then we make the process next to impossible to actually implement.
Right.
And so it's like, look, I get it. You have to vet people in order to ensure that who you're vetting is going to be coming in.
Heck
But
yeah.
the thing is that you you have means and mechanisms to, number one, allow people to begin the process of vetting, but number two, allow them to do certain things that would help them be stable in what they're going to be doing. Like,
Right.
in case people haven't realized, and I say this now as somebody who's watching, the number of openings in their own industry go bonkers. There are a lot of openings out there currently that are not being filled, and there's a lot of openings that, a lot of people that are coming across the border could take because, well, there ain't nobody else taking them.
I know there's 2,500 open truck driving jobs, and there's 2,500 Haitians on the border waiting to come in.
And yeah, not everybody's going to have, the ability to get a CDL. Not everybody's
No, of
going to.
course not. Of course not. But every CDL, every cross-country driver comes with a home. You know, it has a bed behind it. So
Right.
it's the yes, and there's people that can grow our food if we could just get corporations to see
Pick
them
our
as a
food.
benefit.
Exactly. And that's the thing is that, you have that ability to offer, it's, more than what's being offered right now, and lead towards the establishment of, that working life in the United States.
Right.
But we do this weird thing where it's like, okay, no, you can't do that, and we're not going to let you do that. And oh, by the way, we need help. And oh God, where are we going to get it?
Mm-hmm.
It's like we have green cards and resident aliens for a reason.
Right. But that's the thing. I always say this, like if it's a table,
Mm,
rich people have their dining room table. They're never going to buy another table, but poor people buy IKEA tables, and poor people manufacture those. And
mhm,
so the people buying them are the people that are manufacturing them. You need both. You need the people to build the crappy furniture to sell it to the crappy people that buy crappy furniture. And that's low income. And that is a lot of times migrants. And the other thing is, it is so important that we educate everybody as to what they want to do. And even a migrant from Panama can come here as a child, be educated in the American way of life, and then look back at Panama and see what they could change and do
mhm.
that. But they can't do that in Panama while their country burns around them. But making Panama better comes from making the people of Panama better. And if we have to take that 100,000 at a time and change them, and then give them the option to go back and change their country, that's important.
Well, and now that I'm sitting here thinking about this, I kind of want to, I kind of think I'm thinking about like going back to, Dan's talk on what messaging looks like.
Mm,
Maybe what we've failed at is talking about what, green card looks like, what resident alien looks like, what
we
benefits
could
they
do
are
that.
and aren't, able to, really access. What
Right.
does their life actually look like? What kind of taxes are they paying? If they are paying taxes, what does their ability to get certain services look like, if they even can?
Right. They're going to be in our country. Do we want to document them or not? That's the question.
Mhm. And from there, it's just a question of, you know it's you know being able to help people understand what they have uh access to, and be able to track what they are accessing, because you
Right.
have to have both. You have to be able to say this is what they can access, and then find out, hey, how are they accessing this? And from there, it's, you've got a group of people who's going to be playing the gotcha game. Ha, gotcha, you did something you weren't supposed to, we should kick you out of the country. Okay,
Right.
well, did this person that accessed the service actually know that they couldn't access it or weren't supposed to?
Right. It comes down to knowing that the access is there, right?
Exactly.
But I think a
So
lot of a lot of people see the illegal immigrant working on houses for cash money and not paying taxes and being a draw on the system when he hurts himself. What I see is that lady that helped to invent the mRNA
mRNA.
vaccine. You know what I mean? Like what I see is these incredible people that, when given the opportunity to learn, have been nothing but a benefit to the country, going
Mhm.
all the way back to Irishmen and Chinamen and Mexican Americans and everything. Like every group has been demonized while building the country for the next people that will be
Absolutely.
demonized. Like I always think there's this section of Chicago, and it used to be just slums and black people, and then it became Asian people, and then it became Irish people, but now it's Muslim people, and it's this cycle of poor people doing the best they can near education and then going further into the country to do the good work. What I would
Mhm.
like is to give them dual citizenship, so not only can they do good work here, but then they could also do the good work where they want the work, where the work will benefit, creating a hemispheric synergy that I love.
I know you love that, and I will say that, that unfortunately is not necessarily within the US purview. We don't offer dual citizenship.
No.
There are countries that offer dual citizenship to Americans,
Right.
but in terms of how we deal with things, it's either you're American or you're not.
I agree.
And so it's kind of one of those things where it's like you have to have the discussion of, if you're American, you get the benefits and access of being an American. But if you want to claim to be anything else, any other country, then the answer would be no, you don't get that same benefit and that same access. And the big issue, part and parcel, is that you know we try to have this weird idea of what American identity is, when the American identity is literally just an ideal. It's nothing else beyond that.
Right.
It's different. There's a, like, fun fact, does the United States have an official language?
No,
We don't.
like we couldn't.
De facto, we speak English. All of our
Right.
business is done in English, but de facto, no. But we don't have an official language for a reason. The idea is that this is a melting pot.
Right.
People do business in English, but we also have people who do business in Spanish. We have people who do business in Arab. We have people who do business in Chinese and Korean and Japanese. We have people who do business in German. We have people
Right.
who do business in Russian.
Yep. And
The
they're doing it all
idea
right here in America, pooling all of that right here in America, doing that.
because the idea is that the American ideal was that you know if you worked hard, you could become anything that you wanted to and have the freedom to do so. you
Right.
know and so you know the American, being American is about an ideal, and that's where I've met some people who've come across a multitude of borders that are more American than the Americans that have lived here,
Right.
because they have that and that's the problem. I was like, sometimes I'm like, man, are you delusional? Because even I'm sitting here going, does that American dream still exist? But in
Right.
their eyes it does, because they're here and they finally get to do the thing that they
Yeah.
left their home country that they couldn't do or were persecuted for doing.
Yeah. When you swim across an ocean, any beach looks like fucking heaven, you know?
Right. And that's the thing is that
Yeah.
for Americans on every side, you have to get used to the fact that American is an ideal, and the ideal was that all of us together could do things that no one country could, and that
Right.
all of us together would have a variety of opportunities to become great in a multitude of different ways, whether you became wealthy in friends, wealthy in family, wealthy in riches, wealthy in knowledge, wealthy in experiences.
Yeah.
Wealth was always subjective to the American ideal. Wealth was never, yeah, you're going to be a millionaire.
Right.
Wealth was, you might work your ass off every day of your life, but your five kids are going to have the opportunity to do things that
Yeah.
you
To work
never
less
even
and make
dreamed
more.
of.
Yep.
you know and in some ways that American ideal is still there. It's
Mhm.
definitely under siege, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but
and
I
it's
think they're
it's
wrong. I think America is better than any other option we have.
and I do too. It has its problems, like
Yeah.
any country does, and I believe firmly that we have a unique number of opportunities to fix it. But
Hmm.
at the same time too, we also have many issues that other countries couldn't possibly fathom
Thank
as
God.
well.
Thank God for that.
Right.
Like what I thought to myself was Tucker Carlson, he brags so much about Russia, but yet he couldn't be Tucker Carlson in Russia. He couldn't be the opposing party's mouthpiece and survive and be rich and live and not tortured. Like he has the freedom to do that here, but not in Russia, you know? And I think what's important is democracy as an ideal being spread across the world creates other democracies doing it in a different way, which makes America accountable for the way they become a democracy. If we're the only democracy, then any version of democracy, even a less than version, is democracy. But if Ukraine is a democracy and they're doing something, we're held accountable. We have to have a certain floor. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so That's why it's important that we spread democracy, because we can't be the only one. We just can't.
Well, and I mean, I would say that there's also a reason why we have, so many friends and allies that, I mean, you look at France's democracy, it is highly based off of ours. Look at
Yeah.
Japan's democracy, it's highly based off of ours.
Yeah.
Look at Germany's democracy, it's highly based off of ours.
Mm-hmm. And we're
Look
based
at
off England, you know?
uh, you know our democracy is based off of our problems with England.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But that's the
You think
same
about it.
thing.
You think about it, like for example, I believe it's Morocco. Morocco is the United States' oldest ally.
I believe that. Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, Morocco is the one of the few places where Americans don't need a visa to travel
That's cool. That's
because
cool.
Morocco views the United States as a friend,
And we are.
which maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe we need to go say hi to Morocco. Go say hi to our oldest friends.
Yes. I like that. I think what I think Donald Trump created this cynicism that we needed to attack everything. Like as a group, we were naive if we didn't call everything out, right? And then when Joe Biden came in, we were like, we got to call him out. Like, is he the best man for the job? No. Is he the best man to be president right now? Maybe. Out of our choices, he's the one we have. And is he better than what we just had? Yes. Is he worse than what we've had before in the past? Yes. He's just a guy. You know what I mean? But we got
Hmm.
to stop by shitting on Donald Trump. And I said this during Donald Trump's presidency, and I'll say it during Joe Biden's. To shit on the presidency is to shit on America. And to promote the good is to promote America. And so I see the negativity and I see it in myself. And so now I'm just telling Joe Biden he rocks. Is he sleepy? Yes. Does he always seem like he's out of breath? Yes. Does he have a cabinet that could do amazing things if they were responsive to the people they're supposed to be governing? Yes, but they won't. That's what we need to work at. We need to stop blaming the institutionalists, and we need to have a problem with the institution.
I don't disagree with you there, but I also think too that we have a unique responsibility as Americans to be critics of our government, and that it's that criticism of the
Mhm.
government and calling them, out for the shit that they do and holding that is what's keeps us able to hold them accountable.
Just the
I
difference is we stopped on solution bases. We
absolutely,
started pointing at it and saying that's evil, but not addressing how to solve it. And in the
absolutely.
past, we used to have polls and counterpoints and discussions between people that didn't believe the same thing on TV. And at the end, like we do, something would be resolved. Some part of it would go on in the ether in the viewing audience, and they would take something away from it as a solution. That doesn't happen anymore. Tucker Carlson doesn't offer solutions. Rachel Maddow doesn't offer solutions. They highlight the problem. There was a story that just it clicked in my head. There was a story during a Holocaust Memorial Day, and the story started with the Tennessee Board of Education's banning Maus, the book about the Holocaust. And then it went into President Biden memorializing the day with a speech. And then it went into um, the punditry. And I was
Mhm.
like, you started it with the negative. You didn't need to start this conversation about Holocaust Remembrance Day by acknowledging people trying to ban the book. That could have
Mhm.
come later in the show, but you wanted the negativity to get people because just commemorating the day wasn't enough.
Mhm. I would also like to say that in terms of book banning, I do believe that banning books is a freedom of speech issue, especially when you have a governmental body, aka a school board,
Sure.
because I mean they essentially work for the state.
Yep.
That is a freedom of speech issue, and I do not believe in banning books, and I'm going to say that loud and proud and say that I don't believe in banning books like, for example, Mein Kampf, which I've read,
Or the
and
Turner
it's
Diaries.
trash. It's
Right.
absolutely garbage. and it's the ravings of somebody who, thought that they knew everything. I also
Right.
don't, just as I don't believe in banning the Communist Manifesto, which I've also read.
Sure.
And do I think that there are some valuable ideas in the Communist Manifesto? Sure. But on paper, on paper, anything can look good. In
Hmm.
practice, we've seen time and again how it isn't. But you think about it, there are certain aspects of it that we have implemented in our daily lives, whether or not we want to admit it. And simply being willing to look out for our communities and exchanging things with our communities of value without recompense is kind of along that line. Think about
Right.
how many times you've gone out of your way to help somebody, and it's with the recognition that you're helping them in that they're going to help you the next time. And
Oh my God. Yeah.
how many times have you done that? The idea that, we're working together for the same common good, so that way neither of us are the lesser for it.
I'm sorry. That was a
It's
mind fuck when somebody taught me that lesson. Like, that's
right,
a lesson we need to learn, that everything we do is selfish. Like, you're not doing it for somebody else. Because even if you're doing it just so you're happy, then you're doing it to be happy. Oh, it just hurt my head, you know? I was trying to
right,
buy somebody a knife set, and she's like, that's just selfish. And I was like, yes, because I want you to be happy. You know, I want you to have a new set of knives. That's
right.
selfish.
And so, there are lessons that you can take from it, and that lesson is that, you can have this exchange of goods and services, but from my standpoint, you don't need to have the government mandate it
Right.
or control it. You think about it, how many times have people been willing to do things on trade?
The
Why?
barter system. Yeah.
Or barter. Trade is a fantastic system that I love to utilize. Why?
Me too.
Because we exchange goods and services that we both need, that we negotiate and equally value together.
There you go. Make the transaction ahead of time, though. Make the
Yep.
transaction ahead of time.
And then, and basically what you then allow yourself to do is freely negotiate
Yeah,
what it is that you're willing to exchange.
that's
And
right.
the government doesn't get any piece of that. They can get to go
Nope.
fuck themselves.
And I think the other problem is we recognize a problem and then we ask other people to take care of it for us. Like, Pizza Hut's based in Texas, right? Like,
Mhm,
I don't eat Pizza Hut anymore. I don't go out and every day tell people you better not fucking buy Pizza Hut to validate my reasoning. It's my belief that I won't support Pizza Hut. There's other people not supporting things that I use, that I don't even know. I don't know if their policies are good or bad. I shop at Publix. I don't know how bad or good Publix is. I just need to shop there. Other people might say Publix sucks. I don't like them because of this, and I'm not gonna. There was a company run for something, and they help candidates, Democratic candidates, but a disabled guy came out and he was like, "You're not being accessible," and I was like, "Well, help them be accessible." And he's like, "I tried, and they let me go." And I was like, well, that's an issue. They don't want to be accessible, or they don't know that they should be. And he's like, they don't want to be. And I was like, okay. So I stopped retweeting them. You know what I mean? Because
mhm,
personally, I don't believe in run for something's values of not being accessible for all people. If your grassroots building infrastructure, you know, you could
mhm,
build it in. And so that's how I feel about everything. But I don't tell other people don't go to run for something. They do help disabled people run for office. That's awesome. And in their
mhm,
growing with those people involved, they'll become more accessible. You can't blame people for not doing something they don't know that they should do. But if I do say, hey, you should be accessible in this way, I do expect them in a meeting to go, hey, we could do this when it's brought up, right? Or bring it up. That's my goal. If you have a chance to change, you should consider it instead of just dismissing it.
absolutely.
But it's not Jeffrey's place to boycott based on my beliefs. I'm not going to watch the Olympics, and that sucks because I fucking believe in every person that's going to be in the sports. Every athlete I believe in. They've
Mhm,
trained for this. They deserve the recognition and attention. China to me doesn't. And I can't do that. I can't support Beijing, boycott Beijing 2022. You know what I mean?
and
But that's
I
me.
and I don't watch the Olympics because I can't support the networks.
There you go.
I love sport and I love competition. I love the idea of what the Olympics are because uh it's supposed to be this time where we all put aside our differences
Right.
and the best of our countries go out and compete. I just, unfortunately, like, I cannot support the networks in the
It
way
was
that they
kind
do
of like
this.
it was kind of an aversion to war. It was like
Hmm.
diplomacy before war. We would all get together in the part, if there was an issue, like the sports took care of it. The best
Hmm.
athletes performed, and that's how it went. Now it doesn't do anything.
No, and I mean, it certainly is. It's still a dick measuring contest, that's for sure.
Hmm.
You
Heck
know,
yeah. But different dicks.
exactly. It's just that when it comes down to it, it's like the Winter Olympics are really tough. Like especially because it's like you know yeah, it's not like it's like how do I put it? It's like the if for people who watch soccer and World Cup. The World Cup is every 4 years, but every 2 years you have like the Euros, for example, or CONCACAF, and that's just not as interesting as the World Cup. And for me, that's what
Winter
the
Olympics,
Winter
yeah.
Olympics are. The Winter Olympics. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. There's value in it, and there are winter sports, but it's not
Oh
you
yeah.
know it's not the same thing.
I just think winter sports are more, and I don't know how to say this in another way, elite in their skiing, their bobsledding, whereas the Summer Olympics is like running and throwing things and weightlifting, like things that average people do every day, like, and so the Winter Olympics, I don't know if a majority of the country can relate to cross country ski shooting, but I know they can all relate to running 500 feet. And so I
Absolutely.
I I just think there's a difference in the winter sports based on the availability and access here. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know anybody in South Central that has a bobsled or a pair of skis, but I know they all have fucking running shoes, or
And then you
basketball
get
shoes.
Jamaica that's qualified for bobsled again for the
Yeah.
first time in several years.
They
And
put
it's
all
like,
their effort in to do that. You know what I mean? They couldn't do that at home. They had to create something somewhere to practice. It's not like they have bobsled mountains at home.
right, and I mean, hey, cool. You know what? It's
Hmm.
like, celebrate the innovation of it.
Yeah, take down
Like,
the elites. I like it.
so I don't know. Like, my hope is that maybe when everybody decides to stop being shitheads, um, that the Olympics in general will become, uh, I would say what I thought of them once upon a time ago.
In Greece.
But it's just not that right now.
No, I almost want them to like create an island, an Olympic island, and every 4 years just have them there. With no
Right.
government, just send all our athletes to an island and let them do it. No trainers, no healthcare workers, nothing, no infrastructure. Just go to the island with what you bring, like Enter the Dragon style tournament.
Fuck it, naked discus is coming back.
Trial by combat, Giuliani. You're on board, right?
Oh God. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just think we don't, you know, I thought about this. Like people would say we don't disagree, but I think we do consistently disagree. We just don't argue about it. We just state our cases and we try and
Hmm.
come to a normalization. You see my side, I see your side. And we come up with the fact that, I mean, yeah, it's access to this fucking infrastructure we need. It doesn't matter what the government is or isn't involved in. It could be private people, it could be Amazon funding these organizations that help homeless people, or the government. But
Hmm.
if you can't give them access, neither one of our versions will work. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's the reality is that you can have it's about understanding what the end goal is, and then understanding what the barriers are. And quite frequently,
Yeah,
you and I are on different wavelengths in terms of, what we see as the correct answer. And that's perfectly fine, because
I agree.
both of us realize that it's got to be a mixture of both.
Oh yeah. I mean, you love thorium reactors. I learn about thorium reactors. I like desalinization. You learn about desalinization. That's just what we do.
Hmm.
So let's help these kids. Let's Fort Bliss in Texas, go ahead and go there, tear down the fences, burn the tents, free the kids, give them a fighting chance, a running start, let them get out into the population and back to their families, and just take one for the team. All right, guys. Thanks. We just forget these kids are like in arenas and like old Sam's clubs, and they're not like, and they're intense. It's not like they're at the Ritz. It's not even like they're at the Marriott. It's not even like they're in a thema trailer. You know what I mean?
They're in a
It's
glorified dog kennel.
yeah, being watched like all the time. Can you imagine being a kid and just needed 5 minutes of privacy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Or, being a kid and needing 3 showers a day, and
uh-huh. That's what I'm saying. You need a little me time.
I mean,
Fine.
but I mean, the idea that, oh my God, how could you? It's like, look, I was 15 once. I know how, man, I beat that thing like it owed me money.
Right? I didn't think it belonged on my body. I was pulling on it so hard. But
and
that's
and yeah.
there's for-profit organizations dealing with these kids too, which eliminates the regulations. It's just we're funding it by our tax dollars, but we're not enforcing any regulations on it because it's private, you know?
Exactly. And and that's the thing is that, we're also not allowing, that many organizations in order to, take on some of the burden of it. I guarantee you that there would be
Right.
organizations that would come in and help out in whether it's, educational, whether it's services, whether it's,
Yeah.
but we're not allowing it. And I think that is a travesty in and of itself. Is that if you're going to try and get uh, these kids to get up and running, you have to give them access to the services
Yeah.
and networks that they need in order to get moving on this stuff.
Yeah. What
You know,
happened to building little schools for cute little kids? You know what I mean? What happened to America's Peace Corps mentality?
well, I mean, yeah,
We're
that's
we're
that's a
buying
great
desks
question.
for kids in Asia, but we're not fucking getting desks for kids that are right here under our
Hmm.
care. Under our
Yeah,
care. That's
exactly.
horrible. I mean, why are we stealing them from sex traffickers to put them in this situation? They both kind of suck. It just must suck to fucking spend months walking through a desert being attacked by coyotes and lechers and like weird people like gun cartels and making it here and then going, "Oh, yeah, now you're screwed." You know?
You're fucking stuck.
It
Yeah.
sucks. So I do want to talk about Ukraine a little bit
Hmm.
because I find it fascinating. Like Vladimir Putin's making world moves, but I still see him as a single guy, making moves like that. And
Hmm.
I don't I don't know I don't know how I want to latch onto it, but I was thinking like America, right? We are the force in the world to be reckoned with. And China, they're our competitor. They're the upstart coming from behind with the big thing. The next big thing is China. And then we have Russia, which is huge, but they have an economy like Italy because they're like not big. We all
They're
think
big in
Russia
land, not big in people.
Right. We all think Russia is this mammoth fucking thing that can destroy the world, but it has the economy of Italy, which means Italy is just as big as Russia without all the land. And so I don't see Vladimir Putin accomplishing anything that he wants to accomplish. He said he had $65 billion set aside in case of an emergency. How is a country like Russia going to survive on $65 billion if they invade and get sanctions? It's like, what is he trying to go for? And did you hear about I'm sorry, I'm babbling about this. The Irish fishermen. Fuck,
Oh
I
yeah.
love Irish fishermen. Fuck you, I love Irish
Well,
fishermen.
Ireland's like a fucking neutral nation. They're like, what the fuck are you doing? Stay away from us,
Right.
you dumb fucks.
It just so happens that the internet cord goes from Ireland to America, and that's why Russia wants to make their maneuvers there, which I think is funny. They're cutting they're cutting cords all over the ocean, Russia is. And I just think it's funny that I mean, these guys, I love them. They went to the Russian ambassador and had their say, and they were like, hey, we worked everything out. They're gonna leave us alone. And Russia was like, we didn't say that. And they're like, oh, okay, fuck you then. You know?
Yep.
And that's what I think is amazing on a broader scale is that I think the contrast is clearer, and there's people like these fishermen now. There's people in the Republican Party doing the same thing and fighting back against what they need to. And the American people are less likely to agree in authoritarianism now that they see what it actually is. And that's what Russia's pressure on Ukraine is showing everybody. Like, we don't want to be we don't want to be told what to do, right? And we don't think Ukraine should be told what to do. We should all be left to make our own decisions. And if 51% of us think we deserve communism, America's going to be communist, even if there's 49% fighting against that. But I think America, the people that voted for the authoritarian are like, I don't like that. Like, now that they see the example, I don't think they like that. And that's what Russia's doing. Do you see any
Mhm.
way Russia can salvage their reputation? Because I don't see how they're going to win. They made NATO stronger. They made Ukraine more solid, more unified. And now the NATO nations are getting on the same page, except for Germany.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing in and of itself.
Well, he's a new leader. He's got a consensus government. It's not like he's got the Merkel power in him, you know what I mean?
Right,
He's still new.
right. And I would say like this is where this one gets a little bit interesting.
Yeah, totally interesting to talk about.
So this whole issue with Russia and Ukraine has brought out uh, the idea. This Russia's always seen NATO as an existential threat.
Of course, because it's built to protect the world from Russia.
Well, it was built to protect the world from the Soviet Union.
Well,
And
yeah,
when the
I'm sorry.
Soviet Union was, constantly land grabbing, different countries,
Hmm.
that's where the birth of NATO came about. And it was meant to, for people, for countries to apply for membership to NATO. And then, if the Soviet Union decided to try and annex any part of or any nation, the rest of the NATO forces would jump in.
Right, as it should
With
be.
with the fall of the Soviet Union, NATO didn't go away.
Right, but it had no purpose.
Yeah, so it managed to stay in place, but it didn't have the enemy, quote unquote, that
It had the Middle East and 9/11. That's the only things that kept it alive.
but even then it was NATO's purpose was more looking at the nation states that would
Hmm.
actually do something. Terrorism was not necessarily in the purview of NATO.
Right, but protecting people and letting the NGOs or organizations get in there. That's what NATO's job was. Peace protecting.
And a lot of people argued that that's exactly what the UN was for, not NATO. And so
Hmm.
you had this kind of weird dead space where NATO was meant to protect against a threat that no longer existed, but
Right.
was still in place for a threat
Emergency.
question mark. And now with Russia making the moves that it has, and you know people thought that maybe NATO would eventually see a need for focus on China, but you just never had that level of concern with China as you
China's
did with the
pretty
Soviet Union.
smart. China's sly about how they go about taking over the
Mm,
world.
right. But with Russia doing things that it's been doing, once you saw Russia move into Georgia and South Asia, and
Hmm.
forget what the other one was.
Yeah.
You had
Donbass.
Chechnya. No, so this is prior to Ukraine.
Oh, okay.
Um, so you had South Asia, and then you had there was another chunk, and I forget what it was called. But you had Russian forces move into those areas. Um, so before Crimea, you start to see Russia making moves that, what we thought of as, the old Soviet times. So NATO started to look like it might be needed a little bit more. And then you fast forward to, the annexation of Crimea, and the invasion and annexation of Crimea. And then, these quote unquote tourists in the Donbass and Luhansk regions,
Right.
you started to see this need for NATO to potentially address, Russian expansionism, because you have the Baltic states having a number of issues with Russia. You
Right.
have Ukraine now having issues with Russia. Finland's not a part of NATO. Sweden's not a part of NATO, but even they are starting to see issues that, are concerning to them, that they
They're
might be
freaking
that
out. Yeah.
that they might be interested in joining NATO. And the thing is that NATO didn't really have a purpose, but when Russia started making all of these these
Yeah.
military moves into these different areas, suddenly NATO is like, oh shit, we actually have a purpose again.
Yes.
And you know, we looked at, NATO looked at Ukraine like, oh shit, Russia's still doing Russia things,
Yeah.
even though, Russia's doing Soviet Union things, even though they're not the Soviet Union. So then when, Russia sits down and says that, NATO is an existential threat, NATO was never meant to be an offensive force, it was a defensive force.
Right.
But now you have these people, these countries that are sitting down and saying, look, I'm in trouble and I need NATO. It's like, well, you're not a NATO member, so no.
Right.
And so then you have this question of, can Ukraine become a member of NATO? Well, Ukraine's been on the path towards trying to become part of the European Union and NATO, but they had some very serious issues to work on with their government.
And they are
Uh,
working on it.
there was a high level of corruption that,
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
present and is still present.
But they've
Um,
they've they've enacted accountability, transparency measures. They've come a long way from where they were,
exactly.
but
But,
not far enough. Not far enough.
and I would argue that in some cases, I wouldn't necessarily that say that, the things that they have enacted haven't put them on par with some of our other NATO member states, like Turkey, for example.
Exactly.
I
Right.
wouldn't say that, there's a significant enough difference between the way Turkey handles things and the way Ukraine handles things, that Ukraine couldn't be a member of NATO.
Well, I
So
agree. I have there's a special place in my heart for the Baltics. You know what I mean? And I
mhm,
don't know why. I don't know if it's ancestral or if it's just I feel like they're shit upon right now, but I feel a certain way about Lithuania, Ukraine, Latvia, Estonia. Like I want them safe. I do. And
right.
I don't know why. I don't know why. They've never had happiness and I want to make sure they keep it.
And so with all of these with all of these issues that have been presented militarily by Russia, you know, it's started to get to a point where, the United States and NATO have had to respond.
Yeah.
You know, now if you look at historical issues, yes, the United States had once stationed nuclear weapons in Europe, and I mean, realistically, we need to get past the idea that nuking another nation is the path forward, because let's be
Agree.
real fucking honest,
But there is
there's
plenty of
nothing
nukes in Turkey. There's plenty of nukes in the lands around Russia. They're not wrong about that.
right. And I think that's one of the things that, I think any administration needs to deal with next is nuclear weapons. And that,
Yes,
how bad are nuclear weapons, that, the former head of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, comes out and says the world will never be safe as long as nuclear weapons are allowed to exist.
I agree. I don't know if it would be safe without them. It would be safer, but like getting rid of guns just means you're going to have more stabbings, but I think that's an easier thing to begin dealing with and
rendering
wrapping your head around. Yeah.
rendering the planet uninhabitable is
Yes.
not your best answer. And this was like the, well, if Russia's going to make sure that the United States can't exist, then the United States will make sure Russia can't exist. And that's like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? Dude, no, that's terrible. It's like, great. So you're going to glass half the fucking planet, and that's going to screw up the other half of the planet. What do
Totally.
you like? That's a terrible decision. And I think that every government that has nuclear weapons, needs to take a serious look, in the mirror with each other and say, look, is this
Yeah.
really, we have a ton of weapons out there that are capable of doing, great damage without, rendering the planet uninhabitable.
Right. That's right.
And I think that, we need to actually take a look at that, seriously, and not, you know, try and like this idea that we want to wipe each other out is just like fucking crazy,
Agreed.
and it needs to be called out as fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And until that happens, you're still going to see a world at danger, because all it takes is one person who's just like, fuck it, launch the missiles.
Yeah.
And
Pakistan or India. Holy crap. Like we have nuclear missiles. Pakistan and India have them. We got to get rid of that. Like, no.
Pakistan, India, China,
Yeah.
US, UK, France,
North
Russia,
Korea.
North Korea, uh, China, Israel has
Yeah.
nuclear weapons. The only country that has ever had nuclear weapons and voluntarily given them up is South Africa.
Hmm. I like
They
that.
had their own nukes, and then they were like, "Nah, this is fucking dumb. Glassing the planet is not a good idea."
Right. I agree with that. And I want to say, you brought up Israel. I had said that Ethiopia might be the home of the Israelites, and I'm half right. Like a sect of a marriage went back to Ethiopia, and then a sect of Israelites did not. So I was half right on that, but I wasn't totally correct. So,
Mm,
but I don't, Russia, yeah, it's like they did everything they didn't want to do. Now everybody's paying attention. And like when Russia was subverting infrastructure um digitally, it's like people were mad, but they didn't see it. But these forces changed everybody's minds. Like I can't see it as another way as a stratego board, or a risk. What's that game like where you amass people on the borders?
that's risk, yeah.
That's how I see Europe right now, is these Russia. Stop it. Like, stop. You have every right to be there, but stop it?
Right. It's and that's the thing is like all of this could easily be avoided, but everybody right now is like trying to quote unquote ensure their legacies or shit like that, and it's like,
Yeah.
this isn't a good look for anybody.
But honestly, I like trying to play both sides and finding the common ground, but this is Vladimir Putin being Vladimir Putin. This isn't a threat that somehow occurred that he's responding to. It's like one day he woke up and was like, I got a great idea. Let's fuck with the world. It's not like he was like, oh, they're fucking with us. Let's do this. You know what I mean? He didn't have to. He could have gone on TV and said, I don't like the weapons in Europe so close to me. You don't want them in Cuba. I don't want them close to me. And that could have been a debate that he could have turned the world to his, on his side, but he didn't. He put a knife to the world's throat and said, give me. And the world was like, stab me. And I just appreciate that people didn't see it as like a splitting the difference to give him something. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think he thought that's what would happen. He would make 5 demands, and America would be like, we'll give you 2. And he would be like, all right. And they said no. And I like that. I like
Hmm.
that. We can keep talking. That's what diplomacy is. But no.
Absolutely.
And I like Vladimir Zelensky. Like he's a comic that became a politician, and I really think he's doing a pretty great job over there. And every once in a while, I just like to post on Twitter, I love Ukraine, because I really do. I don't know. It's like you've been like Poland. You think of Poland, you think about gray and potatoes. Imagine if Poland had like a society where they could go out and be happy and laugh in the streets, because Polish people are fucking awesome. It's just they've been suppressed for so long. And I
Right.
don't like that for any country. I wouldn't want that. I don't want that for any country. I
Hmm.
I want North Korea to be North Korea. They're an important person in the world stage, but I wish they would let their people make the decision on where they want to go. And if
Hmm.
somebody wants to stay in North Korea, I think they should. You
Hmm.
know, I mean, it's not like you're taxing a farmer that grows dirt, right? Like,
Right.
so let him go to another country. He's not a resource for you, you know.
Hmm.
Russia, let your people go. If they want to go somewhere else, Ukraine, if you want to be communist, go ahead. But let the people out first that don't. Syria too, you know, and I just that's my issue with it.
Oh, absolutely.
Nice. I love it. Playoffs today. We're at the end. Playoffs today. How do you
Hmm.
think? My
Ooh,
Cincinnati or Kansas City?
Casey. I think
Hmm,
Cincy's got a good shot though.
me
It
too.
just depends on. I I think it just honestly depends on how Cincy comes out and plays.
Yeah.
Kansas City has been here a couple of times already.
Yeah.
You know, so they've got a great shot at going back to the Super Bowl. Cincy, God, it's been how long since they've had a fucking shot?
33 years since they were in a playoff game. I don't know. Shoot.
And
I,
so
yeah.
they got a chip on their shoulder, and let's see how it goes.
I think Kansas City's cornerbacks, they've always been vulnerable. I think they're risk takers. And so if Cincinnati's offensive line holds up, I really think that Burrows can push it down the field and make some big plays in that.
It'll be interesting to see, that's for sure.
Yeah. What
And then
about
let's.
Los Angeles and San Francisco? Fuck, I love you, San Francisco. You know, I just fucking both teams took down the Giants, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. So I couldn't be happier. Matthew Stafford deserves this. And so does Jimmy Garoppolo. Like the whole team. I just love San Francisco.
I mean, like Stafford's been around the league for a long time, so I feel like it would be great for him to have a shot,
In
at
Detroit. Yeah.
at winning the Super Bowl. At the same time, the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo, he's he was a great backup to Tom Brady once upon a time ago,
Yeah.
and it just boiled down to whether or not, you've got the assets in place. The 49ers have always been, they can be a real tough team, going back to the Giants last championship between,
Mm.
the NFC championship between the 49ers and the Giants. It was a knockdown, drag out slugfest, and it was a
That,
great game.
yeah. That was a good team. Yeah. I like
So,
that. And you know
uh,
what? Who else I feel good for? Odell Beckham Jr. Like it seems like he's really found peace in a system that he's happy with. And I
mhm,
like that because he went off the rails for a little while. You know what I mean?
mhm,
And it's nice to see him appreciating the sport again and doing one-handed fucking catches. He did a catch and they were like, "Oh, look at that one-handed catch." Oh, it was Beckham. And I was like, "Oh, he's back." So I'm excited about that. You know what I
right.
mean? I like
So,
I like I like player. I like players. And from that standpoint, like Joe Mixon, I really want well for him. Joe Burrows, he's 25 years old. He grew in a system and now he's been let loose. I like players. Odell Beckham. I like fucking Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd is one of my favorite players from the Bears. And I really want to see him get a fucking Super Bowl ring too, because he's worked fucking
mhm,
hard.
yeah.
I like football for that. And I'm so glad it hasn't been politicized. And there's no more talk of COVID like decimating the team like it was during the regular season. That's kind of
Mhm.
weird. I wonder if they're doing different protocols.
I'm gonna go with I think, if I remember right, I read that they're not doing protocols anymore.
That's cool. Do you think we
So,
should be I'm gonna say a final statement because we're done.
I
People are
think.
ti people are tired of the pandemic. Then 61% are rightly tired of it, but it's still going on because of that fucking 59% that won't get vaccinated. Not the 10% that can't be vaccinated, but that other percent that won't. That's why the pandemic is still going, not because we did what was right. It's because people just don't believe in vaccines and we got to fight against that. Anyway, sorry.
And for me, it's that, uh, yeah, I think we're all tired of the pandemic, and it's been exhausting. The last 2 years have been a shit show, to say the least. But I think, when you look at what is available for hospital beds, that should tell you the risks you should be willing to take.
Yeah. We have 120,000 hospital beds in the country, and 106,000 of them are full. That's time to worry. I mean, because we had 96,000 beds and we increased it to 120. So 24 of those are emergency beds, like tents and parking garages. That's not actual, like, institutionalized care. You know what I
Right.
mean? So if you're getting like intravenous drugs in a parking garage in Kansas City when it's 12 below, that's not fun.
No, no,
I
that
love
is
you,
not.
Jeffrey. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Nah, I'm
No.
set.
All right. I love you, and I will talk to you next week.
See you next week.
Bye. And thank you, everybody, for listening to Public Access America. You can find us anywhere except Spotify because people don't like us there anymore. Bye.
Oh my God.
You're